Carney shuts down. Trump's ultimatum, 865B energy deal, collapses the single most expensive promise in North American energy history, worth $865 billion, just vanished. No explosions, no press conferences, just silence, markets crashing, and one headline echoing across the world. The United States just lost its energy leverage. The moment Donald Trump thought he had Canada cornered, Prime Minister Mark Carney pulled the plug. Not with rage, not with rhetoric, with a calculated silence that said everything Washington didn't want to hear. As of this hour, the North American Energy Security Pact is dead, and the collapse has exposed a truth that few in Washington ever wanted to admit. America's dominance depends on Canada's cooperation, and Canada just walked away. It started as an ultimatum from the Oval Office, midnight Washington time. The Trump administration sent an offer disguised as a threat. Sell your oil and hydropower to the U.S. at a 20% discount or face a total border blockade. It wasn't negotiation. It was extortion. And Trump believed Canada would fold. He thought the words energy and dependence would be enough to bend Ottawa. He thought Carney would panic at the thought of tariffs on Canadian electric vehicles and aluminum. He thought wrong. Because when you threaten the person who controls the tap, you forget one thing. They don't need to argue. They just turn it off. At 12:01 a.m., Carney did exactly that. He let the deadline pass, made no statement, and hours later issued a single market notification. Canada is officially decoupling its energy strategy from the United States. The U.S. plan collapsed instantly. The silence in Ottawa was matched only by panic on Wall Street. Energy futures spiked. The Canadian dollar surged. The Dow Jones tumbled. Traders realized what Washington refused to accept. Without Canadian heavy crude, refineries in Texas and Louisiana can't function at full capacity. Without Hydro-Québec's hydropower, the northeastern grid loses stability. Trump gambled with America's thermostat and lost. In a matter of hours, energy traders across New York began scrambling for alternatives. There were none. Every U.S. administration since the 1980s has known one unspoken rule. You can't power America without Canada. Trump tried to rewrite that rule and instead rewrote the definition of self-inflicted damage. To understand why this collapse is historic, you have to understand Mark Carney's mind. He's not a populist. He's not an ideologue. He's an economist, one of the few who sees the entire system as a living network, not a game of dominance. While Trump was crafting threats, Carney was building options. In the past 2 years, Canada quietly signed new energy export deals with Japan, Germany, and India. New Pacific pipelines mean Canadian crude no longer needs to travel south to reach customers. And new LNG terminals along the Atlantic mean Europe now competes directly with America for Canadian energy. So when Trump said discount or blockade, Carney's reply was simple: we have other buyers. And that's when the markets realized this wasn't a bluff, it was a strategy. Satellite data confirmed it first. 3 massive crude carriers off the coast of British Columbia changed direction. Their destination tag shifted from California to Singapore. Millions of barrels of Canadian oil that were supposed to become U.S. gasoline were now heading toward Asia. Within hours, oil traders from Seoul to Mumbai began bidding higher, paying full price. No discounts, no politics. This was the moment the U.S. realized the world had changed. Energy is no longer a loyalty system. It's a marketplace. And Carney just taught America that even allies will sell to the highest bidder. Then came Hydro-Québec's statement, a calm, polite message citing market volatility and transmission review. In Canadian diplomacy, that's code for you'll get your electricity, but not at your old price. For decades, the northeastern United States depended on cheap Canadian hydropower to stabilize its grid. That friendship discount is gone. New York, Boston, and New England utilities are already bracing for a 20-25% spike in electricity costs. Not because Canada is punishing the U.S., but because it's finally charging what the market demands. For the first time in modern history, America's lights depend on another nation's patience. That's not partnership. That's vulnerability. There's another layer to this story, one hidden inside refineries. U.S. Gulf Coast refineries aren't built for Texas oil. They're built for Canadian heavy crude, dense, sulfur-rich, and chemically specific. It's what makes gasoline efficient and diesel stable. Without that blend, refineries must operate below capacity or pay billions to recalibrate. Trump's tariff threats effectively cut off the fuel his own economy depends on, and Carney knew it. Because when you understand chemistry, not just politics, you know leverage when you see it. Usually when deals collapse, there are press conferences, apologies, or spin. Not this time. The White House went silent. No statements, no briefings, because silence in Washington means panic. Trump's team didn't think Carney would actually walk away. They had surrounded themselves with yes men, convinced that intimidation always works. But Carney doesn't operate on fear. He operates on math. He knew the numbers before the threats were even made. He knew that Canada could lose a market and still win the future. Because diversification isn't defiance, it's insurance. Let's talk consequences. Within 48 hours, analysts expect U.S. gasoline prices to rise by at least 30 cents per gallon. Heating oil in the Northeast, up 40%. Plastic and fertilizer prices already climbing. The collapse of the energy pact has triggered a chain reaction. Higher costs for manufacturing, higher food prices, lower consumer confidence. Economists are calling it the North American shockwave. And behind that shockwave is one truth. Trump mistook bluster for bargaining. Carney mistook nothing. He saw everything. The contrast could not be sharper. Trump thrives on conflict, on sound bites, on spectacle. He governs like a brawler in a business suit. Carney, on the other hand, governs like a central banker playing global chess. He doesn't raise his voice, he raises the stakes. Trump tried to build an empire through coercion. Carney built influence through competence. And when they finally collided, competence won. Inside Canada, the public response was immediate and emotional. Far from fear, there was pride. For years, Canadians watched their leaders tread carefully around American politics, afraid of retaliation. This time, they saw a leader who refused to kneel. Online forums, newspapers, and talk shows exploded with a single sentiment. It's about time. Because this wasn't just about energy. It was about identity. Carney reminded Canadians that they aren't America's junior partner. They are a G7 nation, capable of setting their own terms. The world is watching. From Beijing to Berlin, analysts are dissecting every line of Carney's move. In Moscow, officials are calling it a historic recalibration. In Tokyo, energy ministers are preparing to deepen ties with Ottawa. In Brussels, European leaders see a model for strategic independence from Washington's volatility. Carney's defiance didn't just shift power within North America, it sent a message across the planet. You can say no to the United States and still win. Trump's leadership model depends on fear. Fear of being punished, fear of being excluded. But fear only works until it meets indifference. Carney's calm was that indifference. He wasn't impressed. He wasn't intimidated. He simply refused to play the game. And that's what broke Trump's strategy. Because power that requires fear collapses the moment fear disappears. Here's the twist. The clause that ended the energy pact, the sovereignty snapback, was written by Carney's team months ago. It stated that if the U.S. imposed punitive trade measures, Canada could suspend all energy pricing guarantees immediately. Trump's team either missed it or thought Carney would never dare use it. He did. By invoking it after Trump's midnight threat, Carney legally detonated the deal. No negotiations, no breach, just a built-in self-destruct mechanism triggered by Trump's own arrogance. It was a trap, and he walked right into it. In Washington, chaos. In Ottawa, order. Ottawa. The White House is now scrambling for emergency fuel imports. Analysts predict that the U.S. will have to turn back to OPEC and Venezuela for supply, countries Trump once mocked. The irony is profound. In trying to punish Canada, he made America dependent on the very nations he called enemies. That's not strategy. That's surrender. Meanwhile, Canada is cashing in. Energy exports to Asia are selling at premium rates. European buyers are paying top dollar for Canadian LNG. Carney didn't just survive, he profited. Zoom out, and this story becomes more than economics. It's about the decline of fear-based diplomacy. For decades, American presidents ruled with leverage, military, monetary, psychological. But that power relied on others believing they had no alternative. Carney proved alternatives exist. He showed that quiet, calculated competence can defeat noise and intimidation. He turned Canada's dependence into independence. And in doing so, he redefined what leadership looks like in a post-superpower world. For ordinary Americans, the pain is real. Gas prices up, heating bills climbing, inflation ticking higher again. For Canadians, the short-term costs are manageable, but the emotional gain is priceless. For the first time in a generation, Canada didn't yield. And that's not just economics. That's dignity. In the Oval Office, aides describe a volatile mood. Trump blames advisors. He blames the media. He blames Carney. But blame doesn't rebuild refineries. Blame doesn't restart trade. Blame only delays the inevitable. He may still threaten more tariffs or order stricter border checks, but the balance has shifted. The era of intimidation is ending. The age of strategy is here. As we speak, tankers reroute across oceans. Grids are recalibrating. Currencies are adjusting. The world is entering a new energy map, one drawn not by dominance, but by interdependence. A map where smaller nations can stand their ground if they understand their leverage. And no one understands leverage better than Mark Carney. This isn't just a political win. It's a philosophical one. Trump built his brand on the illusion of absolute power. Carney just exposed that illusion as brittle, fragile, and outdated. The future belongs to those who think, not those who threaten. And today, the quiet man from Ottawa proved that you can win wars without shouting, if you know where to place the pressure. The U.S. plan collapsed not because Canada rebelled, but because Canada evolved. And that evolution just changed the future of energy, economics, and diplomacy across the world. This is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new geopolitical era, one where intelligence outmaneuvers intimidation. Mark Carney didn't just shut down Trump's ultimatum. He shut down an entire way of thinking. The deal is gone. The money is gone. But in its place, a message remains. Power without respect always collapses.